Hello, good afternoon. So today is one more time on Libet. Last time you all seemed to be stonily unimpressed by the revolutionary Libet results. So I want to begin by just going over one more time what I take the basic point here to be and why I think it's revolutionary. And maybe now we have time to think about it a bit more. You could tell me again why it's not revolutionary and why I should stop doing this. So the basic Libet point is that action is initiated before conscious intention. Your brain is what decides which action you're going to perform. Your unconscious brain is what decides which action you're going to perform. Then later you form the intention. The naive picture, the natural picture is your conscious intention comes first. You decide, I'm going to pick that up. I'm going to push this lever to the right or to the left. Then my brain will kick into action to bring it about that I push it to the left or that I push it to the right. But I'm in charge. My conscious intention is what starts off the process. But the Libet experiments with the EEG readout from the premotor cortex and the subject noting the time in the spinning clock when the conscious intention is formed, they seem to show that the unconscious brain is kicking in to choose the action and to bring about the whole process of moving the body before the conscious intention is formed. And that suggests that the right picture is that the cell firings that cause action are just causing the action, and your conscious intention is a byproduct of the process. Your conscious life, your conscious decisions are being given off like a gas, as a waste product of the whole decision-making process. You were not being consulted when the actual effective processes were being initiated. You are a bystander. The brain merely notifies you what is afoot. As I said, the initial Libet results were measured in hundreds of milliseconds, the brain initiating the unconscious activity hundreds of milliseconds before the conscious intention was recognized. But these were very superficial measures of the readiness potential. They were just measuring relatively simple scalp measures. But as people have gone deeper into measuring brain activity before the initiation of action, it's turned out that there are these regions that have full information as to just what's going to be happening up to 10 seconds before the awareness of the conscious intention. That prior activity specifically encodes how you're going to decide whatever it is you're doing. And then Libet's, as we saw last time, Libet's way of saving free will is to say, well, you can override once you're notified, as it were. Once you get the notification at the level of conscious intention, you could say, hey, stop that, don't do that. And that's maybe what your free will consists in. That you have this veto over what's happening. That the conscious veto is a control function. It's not just becoming aware of what's happening. So here's Libet. The role of conscious will then is not to initiate a voluntary act, but to control whether the act takes place. And we may view the conscious initiatives for voluntary action as bubbling up in the brain. And the conscious will then selects, that has a kind of presidential veto here, that you can select which ones will go forward to action and which ones to veto and abort with no act appearing. But in the paper I sent round from last year, that I must say I'm still digesting, but that seems to show that even that hope of Libet's doesn't work. The amplitude of pre-stimulus electric readiness potential differed between trials where participants freely chose whether to inhibit or to respond rapidly. So you've got trials where some subjects are choosing freely to inhibit the action. They start the action and then they decide, okay, I'm not going to do that after all. Or else they let the action ride out to completion. Last moment decisions to inhibit or delay depend on unconscious preparatory neural activity. You get the same phenomenon with the decisions to veto. So it's not as if you're in charge and you have a veto. Whether you veto itself depends on unconscious brain activity. That's a bombshell. That is the overthrow of civilization. There we go. Yes? Are you comfortable with that? You shouldn't be. That's the end of the world. That's the end of social life. That's the end of civilization. All of civilization depends on the idea that we are in charge of our actions. We can be blamed or praised for them because we make things happen. I mean, what model of free will could you have that would accommodate that kind of result? I said conscious thinking. We think of conscious thinking as, this is you at the top. This is you and your body. You're the CEO of what goes on here. You get to decide. You say, make it happen, and your minions make it happen. You say, I don't want it to happen. Your minions say, okay, we won't make it happen. We'll make it not happen. But it turns out that you are just a stooge. You are not really what's making all this stuff go on. There is some other backstage unconscious activity that is making it all happen. You might say, well, actually that's consistent with my being in charge. That's consistent with free will. You might say, well, look, to be free is to be the ultimate originator of the action. To be free is to be the guy back here. But what's so special about the CEO here? Well, what's so special is, you might try to say this is kind of counterfactuals. That's to say, were he to say, or she to say, I don't want this to happen, it wouldn't happen. Were he to say, I do want it to happen, then it will happen. So you could say that's what freedom is. If I were to say it's going to happen, it would happen. If I were to say it's not going to happen, then it's not going to happen. I could do otherwise. That's freedom. What about that? And you can say, well, I've got that in the Libet case. You can put it in terms of possible worlds. In the nearest possible worlds in which I say is going to happen, it still happens. In the nearest possible worlds in which I say is not going to happen, it doesn't happen. That's being in charge, right? Is that being in charge? You see why you would think that's being in charge? Yeah. And I mean, you can test that out. You can test that out in everyday life. You can say, well, look, suppose I were to decide not to pick this up, I wouldn't. Were I to decide to pick it up, it will get picked up. So you can test this out. But actually, that's what we really establish we have every day. But actually, what you're getting there is very, very limited. You've got the kind of control over your own actions that a barometer has over a storm. Were the barometer to be pointing at a different place, there wouldn't be a storm. were the barometer to be pointing at stormy, there would still be a storm. Yeah? But that's not because the barometer is in charge of the storm. That's because were the barometer to be pointing at something different, the air pressure would have been different. And it's the air pressure that makes the storm happen. Follow me very closely here. Let me just check. Is the barometer in charge of whether there's a storm or not? No. If you were a primitive savage looking at a barometer, might you think that's what makes it happen? Yes. Because whenever it's pointing at stormy, well, by God, then there's a storm. Whenever it's not pointing at stormy, then there's not a storm. Hey, that's what's making it happen. So that's what you think about your own intentions. So long as your own intentions say, move it to the right, it gets moved to the right. So long as your own intentions say, move it to the left, it gets moved to the left. But that's not because your intentions are making anything happen. Your intentions are just coming along for the ride. Your intentions are indicators of what's going to happen. They are like the barometer. You can predict what you're going to do from your own intentions. But that's not the same thing as them being in charge. Yep. People what, sorry? People like Tourette's. Yes, and then you think, oh, I did that. You mean someone, well, okay, there's lots going on with someone with Tourette's. Do you mean that the person with Tourette's might not know what they're doing?
Well, they don't know before they do it.
They don't know before they do it what they're going to do. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that would fit very well with Libet's kind of picture, where the role of conscious will is to veto the stuff. So, I mean, that's what's, I don't know about you, that's what I always find scary about Tourette's people, that I'm like that the whole time, only I just keep it clamped down, and you're always kind of worried that the clamps might come, well, I am anyway, that the clamps might come off and all this stuff might come pouring out. So that's the picture in which the role of conscious will is to veto that stuff and hold it down. Yeah? But the point of this result is that the veto is not being applied by your conscious life. What's going on this picture, what's going wrong with someone with Tourette's is not that their conscious will is inhibiting, what's going wrong in this picture is not that what's going wrong with someone with Tourette's is that their conscious will is failing to inhibit all this stuff, all the socially unacceptable stuff. It's that the regulative processes in the brain are failing to regulate them. Yeah, the inhibition is not being done ultimately by the conscious will. The inhibition is being done by this unconscious neural activity. Yeah. The brain does its own regulation. Yeah, that's right. What you're articulating there is exactly Libet's picture. Yeah, that the conscious will is clamping down on things. But you have to bear in mind the possibility that what's going on is that you have unconscious brain processes here causing conscious intention. Yep. Causing the action. And the veto is, there are more unconscious brain processes here that are vetoing the action and causing an intention to veto. Yeah, but the intention to veto isn't actually doing any work. It's just along for the ride. The brain is regulating itself, and you're saying, hey, aren't I good? You know, I damp that down. Yeah, yeah. I can't make out you guys' reaction to this. Is this a surprising and astonishing result that can't possibly be right? Put your hand up if that's your reaction. And if you think, okay, a bit higher. Okay. And if you think, yeah, that's what I've always thought. Wow, okay. Some, not many, but some. Okay. What other reactions are there? Surprising but probably true. Antonio?
Yeah, so I just wondering what you would think of this perspective. So you might think that the fact that these trials, these experiments are run on random choice,
Uh-huh.
has something to do with the fact that they can ensure that we're not controlled for this.
Right.
It's all in a way. Right? You might think there's no real randomness. We have to do pseudo-randomly generating actions.
Yeah, you mean move it to the right or move it to the left?
Yeah, exactly. So there needs to be something on which our decision to, time a hand at one point, or push the joystick to the right or left in the experiment, or, inhibit an action.
Yes.
It's conditioned on something. Maybe the strategy to be super moving is, whenever I get this particular kind of urge, that's when I'm going to do it. Now, what the ERT is measuring is measuring that kind of an urge. It's just
Okay.
unconsciously determined, because that's the strategy of the super moving in order to
Okay.
experiment. We don't have to interpret that as threatening our natural picture of free will, right? You can see that that is a cause or a reason to form an intention, and the intention itself
Right.
then still having some determining factor in the final thing.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing goes for the Filevich
Yeah.
article, because you might think the urge itself, again, because it's again in a random choice paradigm, is something that people are conditioning or responsible.
Right. So if they said something like, push the one that you think would make the experimenter happy, or move the one that you think would make your father happy, or something like that, where it's, the product is something deeper, you might not get this result.
That's a suggestion. I mean, the broad suggestion is that
There's a great idea, yeah.
the broad suggestion is that we don't have to interpret the radius potential as anything threatening, but rather just as a cause. If somebody came along and said, look, I've dug a hole right in front of this door, and this hole being here perfectly predicts that when people walk through this room, they're going to take this kind of step over the hole. Just say, well, okay, of course, that's a cause, right? People
Yes.
act in predictable ways in response to certain kinds of causes, right?
Right.
It seems to fit the picture of the cause.
Okay, I see that. On the other hand, you might have thought that this random choice was absolutely the purest expression of free will. You see what I mean? That, after all, if I move it to the right or move it to the left, it's not my background or my upbringing that's making me do it. It's not the cultural forces on me. It's not an oppressive hegemony that made me do it. I just moved it to the left or to the right. That's what's Alison Gopnik's phrase? Dostoevsky and free will. I'm not doing it because it's the right thing. I'm not doing it because I was oppressed into it. I'm not doing it for any of those reasons. I just, out of nowhere, my ultimate CEO authority did it. There you go. That's freedom. I went to the left. And it's not. Yeah. So I see that perspective. Yeah. Anything else on that? 1, 2. Yes, right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the brain's going to be trained. The brain is going to be shaped by all kinds of environmental factors. Yeah? That's right. Anyone who looks at the brain has got to say this is shaped by all kinds of complex environmental factors. It's not just born knowing what to do. Yeah? But that's all right. You don't have to be conscious to be trained to learn. Lots of animals that don't seem to be conscious will learn. A decapitated cockroach will learn, but not because it's conscious. Yeah? So you can get the brain to learn, but not because it's conscious. Yeah? So that vetoing can be being done without the benefit of consciousness. Yeah? They involve you consciously listening to and following a bunch of... Sure.
So if I was unconscious when you experimented, then
Yes.
you
Yeah.
So really,
Very good, yeah.
and all that, I mean, why is that more enough to say,
Yeah. Yeah. So someone over there had that line the other day that your conscious life has to be setting the objectives, even if you're taking the objectives from the experimenter. Yeah, I think that is an important line of thought. The objective is being set, though, at a more schematic level than anything here. It's just push it one way or another, and then all these points kick in within the framework here. Yeah, but I guess the idea, the prediction of this kind of model would be, even when you're in the wild, as it were, like when I come in here, I have to switch on the, what's that called, the computer, switch on the projector, get the screen down. Every time I have this choice, what order am I going to do it in? Yeah, just to vary things I do in a different order sometime, yeah? Watch me next time. Free will at work, yeah? But the prediction would be that if I'm doing that, nobody told me, I didn't have to have some conscious thing here telling me. I'm in the wild, as it were. Yeah. But the prediction would be, if we monitor what's going on in your brain activity, we can predict what order you're going to do everything in before you know it yourself. Yeah, and that's in the wild. Nobody giving me instructions. I mean, if you don't think this is very wild, just imagine I'm out foraging. Yeah. As one does. Yeah, come. I see. I just let my brain do it. Yeah, that's what you're saying, basically. I let my brain do it. You choose. I could have tossed a coin. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
I think it's kind of useful to compare this type of task with terminology when you're about to type up a high value board or to association or something, and you kind of
Right.
step, right? You're trying to figure out a moment to do it.
Yes.
Right? You're trying to get a decision when.
Yes.
And the phenomenology of that is not like, okay, well, I'm reaching my right, I can probably 10 seconds, this is when I'm going to do it. Well, it's not this normal soft conscious moderation.
Right.
You kind of wait for an urge, right? You kind of gear yourself up and you wait for an urge. And sometimes you inhibit the urge, and then sometimes you just let it go and you don't let it go, right?
Right. Right. That's a very good point. I mean, no one in their senses would dive off the highest diving board if they really reflected on it. What you really will have to do is get up there and hope that your body will just take over and do the rest. That's the idea here. Yeah. Okay. The danger is that you set that up and then you get the same experimental result. I mean, it's possible. I agree. You're right. It's possible you're getting that experimental result only for these for these random actions, but it's also possible that these are being chosen just because they're the easiest to study experimentally, whereas getting someone at the high diving board with all the apparatus on is going to be harder. Yeah. But then once we do that, you'll get the same result. Yeah. I think the next point is connected to these questions that are coming up. It's sometimes argued that small children or animals arguably do whatever they want. Right? You want the chocolate, you eat it. You want to go this way, you go that way. And then some philosophers have argued that's not freedom, just doing what you want. What you want is to be in charge. You want to be in control of your own preferences. You want to be able to act on the basis of desires that are authentically yours. And the idea is that if you're a heroin addict, just as we say, enslaved by the drug, you might be doing what you want, because what you want is to get more heroin. But that's not freedom. If you're wanting to get more heroin, is just a product of the fact that your frontal cortex has just been turned into a machine for getting heroin. That's not freedom. You're doing what you want, you're getting what you want, but what freedom requires is the ability to choose what preferences you're going to have. I was actually talking about this with someone in office hours. On this kind of picture, if you can find, look, I love chocolate. Broccoli, I don't like a bit. It's perfectly commonplace to think, those are my preferences, but boy, I wish those were not my preferences. Yeah, I want my preferences to be something different. And you can train yourself. You can train yourself so your preferences do come to be different. That's what all those New Year's resolutions are about. That you're thinking, well, I'm going to bring it about that my preferences are different. So it's arguable that freedom really is a matter of being able to discipline your preferences, being able to prefer what you're going to prefer. Or at any rate, that we certainly want some notion of your authentic preferences, that you should be able to act in accordance with the desires that you really identify with. It's not quite obvious that not just any second-order preference, not just any preference about your preferences will count. I mean, if you're in prison and you start out acting up to your jailers the whole time, and then they'll eventually flog you into wanting your preferences to be the same as their preferences, that's not really freedom. You get second-order desires there. I want my preferences to comply with their preferences, and you brought your preferences into line with it. That's not really freedom. Is that freedom? It doesn't seem like freedom. But anyhow, some picture like that on which you're in charge of your own desires, that's very appealing. But even if that's your picture of freedom, if all this kind of thing is going on at this level of conscious intentions that are epiphenomenal in producing the action, no amount of that kind of stuff is going to add up to you being in charge. And this matters for criminal law. It matters for just blame in everyday life. And we talked about this example before of you're in a court of law, you're being asked, did you do this out of a desire for revenge, or did you do it to defend yourself? And as Jasper said, what the jury is doing there is trying to sink itself into the psychic situation of the defendant and understand genetically by empathy how one psychic event emerges from another. That's the whole point. That's what you're doing. You're asking, was this revenge or was this self-defense? Revenge, self-defense, revenge, self-defense. But actually, if this picture is right, the revenge and the self-defense, neither of them brought about the action. Whether it was revenge or self-defense is completely irrelevant to the causation of the action. It doesn't matter. When you put yourself into the psychic situation of the other, the action did not grow genetically out of the psychic situation. The action just grew genetically out of the brain processing. There's no point in trying to hold someone responsible for their unconscious brain processing. We ought not to be doing that kind of exercise at all. And on that bombshell, here ends the second section. You do understand that this is the end of criminal justice as we know it? You can't just be blasé about this. Listen, yes?
I just had a question. Could you still accept it? Could you still say something like, no, it does matter if feeling you had was revenge or a feeling of self-defense?
It matters if you felt revenge or self-defense,
If you were free, unfortunately you're not.
Yes.
Revenge is what would have driven you
Yes.
to the prison. And I'm just wondering, even if you give up freedom, could you hold on to?
Thinking that this makes a difference.
Yeah, but it's like,
Yeah.
it's epiphenomenal, but if it weren't,
If it weren't epiphenomenal. It's pretty tenuous, isn't it? I mean, it's like these cases in which the police arrest someone and they say, well, he didn't actually commit the crime, but we knew he could easily have committed the crime. A real bad lot. Give him a chance, and he nearly had the chance. He would have done it. That doesn't count. Yeah? Saying, well, if you had free will, you'd have done it. We can prove that. That's not the same thing as showing you actually did it. Yeah? So really, I mean, the criminal justice system is built on Libet's kind of result being wrong. But it's not wrong. Is it? Yes? Yeah. You want the whole society to be stable, huh? Oh, I see. Very good. It's the unconscious brain that is generating the legal system too. Yeah, right. Uh-huh. Well, you say that's why he's doing it, to make everyone stable. That's what you think. Yeah, I mean, how do you know why he's doing it? Yeah. I see. So you're just saying this from your unconscious too. Yeah, you see, this is what I mean about the breakdown of everything. It gets even hard to have an ordinary conversation. Yeah? I mean, how can I accuse you of making a mistake or committing a quantifier fallacy or something when, after all, it's just your unconscious brain doing it all, you weren't in charge? It's what? Yep. Well, yeah, you have this confidence in the benevolence of the unconscious brain. You know, it wants to make society stable. I don't know. I mean, maybe it just wants to make more brains. You know, why should you think that the goals here coincide with any particular human goal? It's generating all these goals that we have. But that doesn't mean to say that it shares them. It may be using us as pawns for its own ends. Okay. Actually, maybe we should just pack up there. Yeah. I think the hard questions about the Libet experiment have to do with whether and I guess a number of people have raised this kind of thing already. They do have to do with whether these experiments are measuring what Libet takes them to measure. And we came upon this before when we were talking about reliability and validity, that if you take a classification like schizophrenic, it's one thing to get a measure that's reliable. You want to get it so that whenever psychiatrists are assessing a patient for schizophrenia, they all come out with the same answer. You want reliability in the classification. Is this person schizophrenic or not? You want to get that to be coming out right. It's a further question. Is the classification doing what we want it to do? Is it picking out the phenomenon that we want it to pick out? And at some point we'll go on and look at intelligence as another concept where that issue comes up. We have reliable ways of testing for intelligence, but what exactly are they identifying? Is there any one thing that they're identifying? That's a further question. So with Libet's experiment, what the clock there, this thing going round and round 25 times faster than a regular clock, where the subject is being asked to report the onset time of the conscious intention. What Libet emphasizes is that you get a lot of reliability there. People will give the same kind of answers as each other to what the onset time was of the conscious intention, and you'll get reliability within a single subject. And the idea is that what that's measuring is the onset time, civilization collapsing around us, the onset time of something, the conscious intention that's been given off as a byproduct here. But of course, that's not the only reading of the situation. It would also be possible to interpret what's going on, what's being measured by the clock, is that what happens is there are these unconscious brain processes that kick into action before the conscious intention, but the conscious intention is actually something that causally matters, but it's en route to the action. You see what I mean? It might be that you need the conscious intention. If you had a large pair of surgical scissors and you reached in and cut out the conscious intention, the action wouldn't happen. That's different to the picture Libet has. And the picture Libet has, if you snipped out the conscious intention, everything the human is doing would carry on as before. But it's consistent, so far as I can see, with his results to say the conscious intention is really essential. If you cut it out, nothing would happen. But anyway, the validity of that construct, what does it mean, a conscious intention? Anyhow, I mean, the picture I have is you got this intention and there's a kind of glow around it, right? There it is glowing in your consciousness. And of course, when things glow like that, you know when they're there. So when this thing shows up glowing, you look where the hand is in the clock and you note that. But this notion of a conscious intention, you could argue, this actually bundles two different things together. There are two different things. There's having an intention and there's being conscious of the intention. I don't know, you're painting your living room yellow and someone says to you, "What are you doing?" And you say, "I'm painting it yellow. What do you think I'm doing?" And they say, "You know what you're doing, don't you? You're punishing your mother. She hated that shade of yellow. That's why you're doing this." Or, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but sometimes you can come out after a conversation at a restaurant or something, and someone takes you aside and says, "You know what you were doing in that conversation, don't you? The whole time you were trying to steer the topic round so you could make this point." It's despicable. And if you're like me, you get your reaction is not, of course not. Your reaction is, "My God, did I really do that? Is that what I was doing?" I mean, having the intention is one thing, and knowing that you've got the intention is another. Yeah? You could be engaging in lots of goal-directed activity without knowing what you're doing, without knowing what you're up to. So there are two things. There's the intention, and there's knowing you have the intention. So that notion of a conscious intention just bundles together these two ideas. What the clock is measuring is when you know about the intention. That may be a different thing to when you have the intention. The intention may be there long before knowledge of your intention is there. So these examples that we had from Huxley of the frog or blind sight or motion blindness, where you have complex coordinated action in the absence of consciousness, that might just be showing what consciousness means here really is knowing about your own intentions. But that might be showing only that you can have the intentions and perform the actions because of the intentions without knowing about those intentions. Being in charge just demands that your intentions be making stuff happen. So the Libet-style experiments might only be showing that the formation of intentions is coming before the knowledge of the intentions. That brain activity that's being recorded, these unconscious brain processes, they might just be the brain processes that are you forming the intention. This is the intention right here. This is the intention to veto right here. this is the same thing as that brain process, having that intention. And what these experiments are showing is that forming those intentions can come as long as 10 seconds before you know you have the intention. So you are indeed in charge. You are deciding, is it going to go to the right or to the left? It just takes a while for you to realize that that's what your intention is. So I think that question of validity really comes up here. Libet is measuring something, but it's not, I think, what he thinks he's measuring. He's got that notion of a conscious intention that bundles together these two different things, the intention and the knowledge of the intention. The glow in the conscious intention is the idea, the picture is your intention is popping up and saying, hey, here I am, and you're spotting where the clock is when it said, hey, here I am, glowing away. But that is the glow there is just you bundling together the two different ideas. So I said one reading is you've got all these cell firings causing the conscious intention and that causing the action. But you could deconstruct it even further. Those background cell firings, that is the intention. That is you deciding what to do. That is your freedom kicking in. And your second-order desires, your authentic identification with some desires and not others, that might all be backstage stuff that is in the background determining which intentions you form. Or Antonia's kind of comment about, well, when you've got some complex case, like, I can't remember, what was your example? Jumping off a cliff, yes, right. I see, yes, right. Now they'll all be sorry. Right, now they'll all wish they'd treated me better. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's all being controlled by this stuff backstage. It doesn't have to be stuff that you know about for it to be authentically yours. They just are your intentions. They just are your background goals, your background identity. But you may find it very hard to articulate. I mean, questions of identity are notoriously hard to articulate for the people who have the identity. But they may nonetheless be driving you, and you're not any less free because of that. So this picture on which cell firings cause action, they give off a conscious intention like a gas. If this diagnosis is right, we should just replace that picture with one in which those background cell firings that are causing the action, those are your intention. That is your intention back there. Then that causes your knowledge of intention. Now, your knowledge of your intention doesn't necessarily have any impact on the action at all. So far as your knowledge of your intention goes, you really are just an observer. Yeah? Unless you kick in a veto. But in the ordinary case where you don't veto the action, your knowledge of intention really is just along for the ride. But it was still your intention that made things happen. So once we separate out knowledge of intention, the idea of the conscious intention, and the intention itself, then we can save civilization. I'm not saying anybody maybe nobody noticed, but if that's right, we just saved civilization, right? Yes? Yes. Yes, absolutely. Is that the question? If your actions are generated by intentions of which you are unconscious, are you really a free agent? Is that the question? I just read the EEG. I knew. Yeah. No, I just completely agree. That's a natural question at this point. I think this is the natural reaction to Libet, that he is making this mistake in just putting together intention and knowledge of intention. But if the price is that we say our actions are being dictated by unconscious intentions. How much control do we have over them if they're unconscious? I mean, the whole thing about second-order desires was, the whole reason consciousness seems important for free will is that we say brutes aren't free. One reason they aren't free is that we think of our own freedom as, in part, what's going on is that when you're consciously deciding what to do, you can survey consciously a range of alternatives and fully self-knowingly pick out one of them. So that's why it's natural for Libet to put these things together. You think that conscious intention is needed for you to be aware of what you're choosing to do as one among a range of possibilities open to you. You think of your intention as one among many intentions you could form. And what the Libet results seem to be showing is that that's not the way intention works. Your conscious reflection isn't in charge of your action, after all. So even if we're getting that we're in charge here, that our intentions are causing what happens, there's still a sense in which it's left open. Is that what we ordinarily thought we were doing? Is that what we ordinarily thought was going on? Because we don't actually have the ability to survey our motivations and regard them as one out of many possibilities open to us. We don't have the thing that we ordinarily thought we did. So I think the Libet results are still disturbing, even if we can, for the moment, keep the quivering pillars of civilization just about standing. Okay, let me just ask you. I'm not quite. I know that you guys are just about to wrap up on your essays, hopefully. What would you like to do on Monday? Let me give you a choice. We could carry on with. I think we should carry on a bit with free will and agency anyhow. Another thing we could do is just, by the way, as a one-off, do something about the concept of intelligence. I think we might do that at some point anyhow. Can you put your hand up if you'd like to carry on with free will? If you'd like to do something on intelligence. I make that a dead heat. Let's do that again. If you'd like to carry on with free will. If you'd like to do something on intelligence. Okay. If you wish it was the end of term already. Okay, let me think about it. Maybe we'll combine them. Okay. Well, on that note, we'll pack up for today. Thanks very much.